Holy cow, the Cubs streak of 7 consecutive series ends in Comerica. Welcome back to the Holy Cow, bringing you the series recaps and latest on the Chicago Cubs. This weekend, the Cubs headed to Detroit for a 3-game series against the Tigers, a series that unfortunately saw the Cubs lose their first series in quite a long time. I'm going to break down what happened in Comerica Park. The series kicked off Friday with a tough, competitive 3-1 loss for the Cubs in front of their third sellout of the season. This game, true pitchers duel between Ben Brown and Tigers' Tarik Skubal, who is the reigning American League Cy Young Award winner. Ben Brown was outstanding for the Cubs, though. He pitched 7 innings, allowing only 2 earned runs on 7 hits while striking out 7. Despite taking that loss, though, this was a positive step for Brown. The manager, Craig Counsellor, he said in his last 2 starts, the team has seen the best of what Ben Brown brings, which is a great sign and a big step for this team. Brown himself felt this game was the most high leverage intensity he had pitched in his short major league career. He described it as electric with fans hanging on to every pitch. It was a playoff atmosphere this weekend in Comerica. And that's something you can expect with Skubal on the mound. The two earned runs he gave up were a run-scoring single and a solo home run to Spencer Torkelson, who absolutely was a problem for the Cubs this past weekend. Skubal, on the other hand, phenomenal. Pitched 7 2/3 inning, gave up only 1 run on 8 hits. However, I don't think he was the Cubs' biggest problem. I think the critical play of this game came in the 5th inning. With PCA on base and Dansby Swanson hitting a single down the left field line, PCA came around third. It looked like he might score easily, and as PCA, he's prone to do with that speed he's got. But for some reason, he slammed on the brakes and tried to get back to third. Bad move. He was immediately thrown out by Javi. That play turned a situation that would have been runners first and third with nobody out into a man on first and 1 out. Terrible base running mistake that should never happen at this level. You let Skubal off the hook, and you just can't do that with a pitcher as good as him. Another key moment came in the 8th inning when Seiya Suzuki hit what looked to be a go-ahead 2-run home run, but Tigers outfielder Kerry Carpenter made a leaping catch right at the wall to end the inning. Overall, Tigers' defense was stellar throughout Friday's game, something that Cubs fans are used to saying about their team. There was at least 4 really nice defensive plays early on. A turn should be hits into outs. It's going to be tough when you got a good pitcher on the mound like that. First baseman Spencer Torkelson said his guys gave him an absolute clinic. Javi Baez made key defensive plays as well. He was the one that threw the ball to third, to home to get Swanson out on that play, critical play in the 5th inning, taking advantage of PCA's overrunning the stop sign. So this is what it feels like to get El Mago. It's good to see my boy Javi still got that amazing feel in the field. The Cubs ultimately failed 3-1 in the opener. Saturday was a different story on the way. The Cubs bounced back with a dominant 6-1 victory. The offense found its power, and the starting pitching continued to impress. Jameson Taillon was magnificent on the mound. He delivered another excellent outing, allowing just 1 run on 3 hits with 5 strikeouts over 7 innings. This was his 4th straight quality start and 9th and 13th starts this season. In his last 4 outings, Taillon has a 1.69 ERA with a 0.71 whip, and the Cubs are 4-0 in those starts. This is probably his best stretch of pitching in his career, and he's looking like a front of the rotation type arm, which is desperately needed for a team that's down Assad, Amaga, and Steele. But the big story in this game was the offense. Cubs hit 5 home runs in this game, which is crazy because Comerica Park is one of the best pitcher-friendly parks that there is. They've allowed the 8th fewest home runs entering Saturday's game. It was only the second time this season that a team had combined for 5 or more home runs at Comerica, and the second time the Cubs hit 5 or more in a game all year long. Now, the home runs came from Pete Crow Armstrong, Michael Bush, Matt Shaw, and Seiya Suzuki hit 2 of his own. Bush's home run was his 10th, which gave the Cubs 5 players with double-digit home runs. And Matt Shaw's home run was the first home run from a Cubs third baseman all season. Home plate umpire Doug Edding's strike zone was a topic of discussion on the broadcast, with field mics picking up his voice arguing with the Cubs dugout. PCA was visibly unhappy with a called strike 3 that looked low. However, PCA later hit that solo home run with a pitch that was below his knees and definitely out the strike zone. Well, take that. The Cubs rolled to that 6-1 win, setting up a decisive rubber match on Sunday, in which the Cubs lost 4-0, losing the series to the Tigers. And this is the first time the Cubs lost a series in close to a month. Game was frustrating. It felt like Friday's loss in some ways. The most glaring aspect of Sunday's game came when the Cubs' bats suddenly went silent. Cubs offense typically scores a ton and had most of the runs per game and had led the majors in runs per game going into Sunday. But for some reason, Tigers pitching silenced all that. They were just 1 for 8 with runners in scoring position and struck out 12 times, with every starter striking out at least once. Rookie Cade Horton on the mound for the Cubs continued a trend of getting his head beat in the first inning. He allowed 2 runs, and I don't like the Cubs being in early holes, but they've shown plenty of times their ability to get back in ball games. But it's something that they really do not need to be putting on themselves. He allowed another 2 runs later on in the 5th, finishing with 4 earned runs, his highest total in his major league career. He did generate a career-high 17 whiffs and 6 strikeouts. This was Horton's first big league loss. Base running again, another focal point in the fourth inning. Ian Happ was sent home from second base on a Pete Crow Armstrong line drive single to right field. Tigers outfielder Kerry Carpenter made a perfect throw to get Happ at the plate. Happ was called out, and the call was upheld after review, though I felt he was safe. Another debatable decision coming around third base. No one thing leads to losses, and the Cubs have used aggressive big plays all season to go on scoring runs. But you've got to feel that not getting their way either time in this series heavily led to the loss in both occasions. Later on in the game, both Nico Horner and Craig Counsell were ejected for arguing a called third strike that was clearly low and inside. Craig Counsell was ejected after taking issue with Horner's quick hook, leaving the Cubs without their highest average hitter and their manager. Not only was the ump clearly wrong, but to have a quick hook on a player after you were wrong is hysterically trash. Send him back to the minors. With the bats quiet and a couple of crucial plays going against them, the Cubs lost Sunday's games 4-0, losing the series to the Tigers. So Cubs lose their first series in quite a long time, and they now look to bounce back as they head to Philly next.
All right, we got a at our door. We got a special guest in the building. If you're at Bleachers to Speakers, get person, then you're pretty familiar with them. But I'll let him do his introduction. The face behind the Frustrated Chicago Sports Network and representing affiliate of FFSN. Who we have in the building today?
This is Pay. Holy Cow podcast over at the Frustrated Chicago Sports Fan channel. And I I got a lot of questions for you guys. Congratulations on the series win, first and foremost.
Okay.
But do you all always play Don't Stop Believing at the park at Comerica?
Pretty much.
A nice little mix. Yeah, you know.
It's more than just the Tigers. It's the Red Wings, Pistons games, Lions. Yeah.
Yeah, I know I've heard it watching Pistons games. So that's what I got to thinking. I was listening to the game on the radio broadcast, and I'm like, does every Detroit team play this song? It's got to be that Born in South Detroit part, right?
You know, I mean, there you go. You picked up on it.
That's y'all anthem. Okay, I got it. No more Lose Yourself. It's the Journey song now. Got you.
Absolutely. But yeah, we, like you said, we were victorious, 2-1 in the series this weekend. And yeah, that was the battle of the best team in the major leagues at this current moment. Obviously, you guys are holding it down in the National League, and we're doing our part in the American League. But what were your takeaways? What did you see from, I don't know how often you get a chance to watch this, but what were your observations from the series?
Quite honestly, it was like watching a mirror, looking like what we see on a day-to-day basis from the Cubs. Great defense, clutch pitching, aggressive base running, good offense. Minus the offensive part, but the Detroit Tigers this weekend, they came up with timely hits and timely runs. So it sort of, to point out what I was saying, it's like watching the reverse image of the Cubs. I expected to win this series after we tied it up 1-1 yesterday, because Jack Flaherty, we are very familiar with him. As you know, he's a longtime Cardinal. We understand what he's got. He's a 2-pitch pretty much starter in the league. He's pretty average for most of his career, but he looked like Scooble Jr. today.
Yeah. We're pretty familiar with. Last year he had a pretty good season, so we've gotten lucky with the Flaherty that we've gotten to see. But I know he wasn't always this good.
No, I think he's on I was doing my homework before I clicked in. He's on a little of a run lately. Like with the last 5 or 6 starts, has been I think he's lowered his ERA about a half or close to 1 run, something like that. Been pretty good the last few outings. So bad luck on the Cubs for catching them at the wrong time.
Absolutely. You guys had a pretty disappointing season, missing the postseason last year. But what was the energy? First of all, what's the energy like now? Obviously, you guys have turned things around, but were your expectations that this high going into the year this year?
Absolutely. From the second they made that trade for Kyle Tucker, all lights are on. It's go time at that point, because one, you trade for a guy who's in the last year of his team control, and a guy of immense talent like Kyle Tucker. You already know what time it is. Juxtapose that with our president of baseball operations, Jed Hoyer, in the last year of his deal as well. So something's got to give, right? We got to push all our chips to the table. So I think the fan base understood that this is going to be a season in which we are going to go for it. Whatever it is, their Cubs are going for it. And as up to this point, June 8th, everything's looking rosy. I'm happy we got to see the best in the AL at this point, because we've been taking scalps in the NL. So now that we measure ourselves against the AL, like, okay, so we see where we are. We think we can hang. We got to see you all's ace. Our aces are on the IL at this point, even though James and Taillon has been looking great, and he looked great again yesterday. But that's not our best. We figured that coming into the season, we should contend, and we've done so at some point. So far, so good. And maybe we get some arms back healthy. We can go for that run after All-Star break, after trade deadline, and hopefully we'll be right back in Comerica at some point in October.
I know there was in the off season there was a lot of shuffling of feet, if you will, at the rather large price tag they ended up giving out to Dansby Swanson. Kind of a brave guy myself too, but I know he'd been fairly average for most of his career. When on that initial signing, what were your initial thoughts and reactions in terms of the price and the overall terms of that signing?
This offseason, you're talking about Dansby Swanson. He wasn't extended this offseason, so I think you're referring to
unless it was the previous year when he went with then it was the same year when Freddie signed with LA and that whole agent fiasco. But yeah, I knew because he'd been fairly average, not terribly great offensively. So you're kind of paying for a bit more of everything else.
Well, you're not lying there. Dansby Swanson, even this season, he started the year, I think the first maybe 6 weeks of the season, maybe even first 6 weeks. Let's go that far. First 6 weeks of the season, he was batting barely 200. And if you put those 6 weeks together and put him with the other seasons he's been in Chicago, we was definitely paying just for the glove. No doubts about it. I know some other podcasters, content creators for the Cubs, they were going as far as to say he was the new Jay Hay. If you all don't know who Jay Hay is, Hayward. Hayward, that was the hero of the Cubs World Series team. You call him the hero because he supposedly gave that speech that helped the Cubs pull together in the Game 7, right? But if you also recall during that time, Jay Hay was just a glove. He can barely hit 180. Yeah, so Dansby Swanson since the last 6 weeks, since the first 6 weeks of the season, his bat's been pretty good. He's one of the 5 Cubs with over 10 plus home runs. His average has raised, I think he's about in the mid 250s right around that point right there. So he's average right about now. I think he's got an outside pusher even being in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm. And I guess my only other thing, obviously now that they're such a prolific team right now in the National League with the quick turnaround and improvement that you've alluded to here, what is, aside from the win-loss record, what have been your overall impressions with Craig Counsell, the new manager at the helm, moving over from the divisional rival Milwaukee?
So if you asked me this last year, I would say, he's overrated. He's overrated. He's overpaid. Because the Cubs are paying him, I want to say, about $8 million a year, maybe something like that. He's one of the highest paid managers in all of baseball. But this year, he's made all the right moves. He's pushed all the right buttons. He's got everybody in the correct space that they need to be. He's made great moves with the pen. As you know, last year we missed out on the playoffs mostly because of a bad pen. This year, he's managed that bullpen a lot better. He's got them opening games. He's got the right guys closing. He got the right guys in the high leverage area. All the right moves, and he's done a great job managing all these pitching injuries that we have. We've got 60% of our opening day rotation on the IL right now. Javier Assad, our ace, our opening day guy, Justin Steele, and Shachada Ibinaga, our big addition from overseas. So just that right there, Craig Counsell, he's manager of the decade for the Cubs for me right now.
All right, and so obviously Kyle Tucker, who I've seen you campaign, about signing him long term, but also I'm sure that he's a former player of AJ Hinch as well. Did you get a chance to see his thoughts on possibly being reunited with Mr. Hinch? I mean, he didn't say Detroit specifically, but we know AJ ain't going anywhere. Did you see his thoughts on being reunited with him?
I have not heard that. I'm in a bit of a thought bubble, and I don't want to think about Kyle Tucker being anywhere else except the except Sheffield and Addison. I know there is a team. Obviously, in this era of baseball, you always got to look over your shoulder for those Dodgers and their deep pockets, right? But now you're telling me that Detroit is also sniffing around. Come on, man.
Yeah, no, I mean, I kind of built it up. He kind of, I mean, obviously he gave, he showed love to AJ because, he, in the early part of his career, he was obviously, integral in coaching him. And he obviously has won a couple World Series, or I think he just won one with AJ, but 2 overall in Houston. But, he obviously just kind of shrugged it off, say, we'll see. There wasn't anything too spicy, but it did get the wheels turning. Obviously, we would love to. We'll find a place for him to play. Obviously, our outfield is pretty strong, but if Kyle Tucker is obviously having a fine year, one of the better players in baseball right now. So just something that kind of crossed my mind. Of course, this was a Detroit telecast. This wasn't anything that we've come across on Marquee. What is it called? Marquee Sports or whatever.
Yeah, it's no longer the Superstation. It's no longer WGN. It's now Marquee.
Yeah, those were the good old days. That's the reason why there's so many Chicago Cubs in Detroit now, is because we got to watch the Braves on TBS, and we were watching the Cubs on WGN. So.
That's how you become a nation, right? Cubs Nation is an army, better yet a navy. Just thanks to WGN.
Right, and there was a lot of Cubs fans in attendance. I went on Friday, but I'm sure all weekend is what I'm hearing. So
it looked, from what I heard, it was 3 straight sellouts, right?
Absolutely. Yep. Starting with obviously the ace on the bump on Friday and closing out with a day game on Sunday. So very fun. Could very well be could possibly be a preview of the World Series. I certainly would hope so. I wouldn't mind hosting the World Series with you guys if it means that we get to go. So
just a couple of Midwest sports cities with the outdoor baseball stadiums in October.
Yeah. So it might be a little chilly, but lastly, I mean, as we talk about World Series and preparing and getting making sure your team is equipped to make that playoff run, do you see the Cubs being active with the trade deadline, or do you think that they'll that once their starting pitching gets more healthy, that you guys will be set after the trade deadline?
That's a unique question. So if you'd asked me again let's say in April, most definitely. I think guys were, because Steele got ruled. He's out. Justin Steele, our opening day starter. He's on top. He just had Tommy John. So done for the year. And our bullpen woes traveled from last season into this season to begin the season. So there was definitely let me not say uproar, but fervor for Jed Hoyer to make some moves and get us an actual closer, because Ryan Presley, aka Ryan Stressley, was killing us in the high leverage close games out situations. Right, he looked like Rod Beck. If you know, you know. The shooter. It was had too much of that to begin the season, but as of late, definitely all of May and in the first week of June, the Cubs bullpen is one of the best in the league, maybe top 10 in the majors, right? As far as ERA areas, they've been pretty good, and there's no way we would be the one of 2 teams with 40 wins right now if it hasn't been for the bullpen carrying a starting rotation that, for one, can barely get quality innings outside of James and Taillon, for 2, down 2 of their best pitchers, and for 3, needing openers for Colin Ray and Ben Brown. So, yeah, that bullpen. I don't know if you need to do anything with the bullpen. I would probably think you don't need to rest on your laurels, especially with Matt Boyd, who's probably our best starter right now outside of James and Taillon. He has never pitched as many innings as he's about to pitch in his next start. In his next start, I think that will go into a critical area because he's dealt with injuries the last I want to say 3-4 years, most of his career. So he's been electric for the Cubs. I think he should be an all-star, my opinion. But if you don't have a plan just in case, you're probably setting yourself up for failure, right? As far as starting pitchers, who else is out there? You might want to holler at the Reds because they're not going anywhere. What are they doing, Abbott? Give us Abbott. We can use a guy like that. His ERA is sub-2. He doesn't need to be on a squad like that. Put him on the Cubs. Let him compete. Let him contend for once. Let's see what the White Sox got. They always got some good pitchers over there. Why stop giving them all to Boston? Give them to the Cubs. I mean, I'm not sold on Sandy Alcantara. That's a name that you've probably been hearing a lot for a lot of contending teams looking for an arm because the Marlins are who they are. They're not going anywhere. They like to sell early. Shout out to Arraez last year. But he's coming off. He had TJ last year, right? So this is his first year back. Do you really want that? I don't want it for the Cubs. Maybe somebody else can take him on, but if it's not Abbott out of Cincinnati or maybe somebody else from off the Rockies, or the Rockies got some good players, even though they're terrible. They do got some good players.
They do.
maybe off the Rockies, maybe somebody off the Sox. Other than that, we shall see. Thank you all for having me on, and I agree. I definitely want to see a Tiger Cubs World Series. We got to get that. Got to get that rubber match. They've played 4 times in the World Series, split 2-2. We need that rematch for 45. We need to run that fade. We got to get it back.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm all for that.
Thanks for listening to this latest episode from the Frustrated Chicago Sports Fan Channel. Don't matter if you listen to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or watch it on Twitch or YouTube. Make sure you like, subscribe, share with a friend, hit the notification bell so you never miss a drop. And to all the guys from Chicago, we say 3 things. Bear down, go Cubs go, and sell the team, Jerry.